Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this webinar about the Extending the Dream grant. We're going to start in about a minute or two, see if there's a few more people who join in. Please know that the meeting is being recorded, and the recording should be made available on the SACAC website, hopefully within a few business days. But we'll give people a couple more minutes to jump in. Once again, we'll give another minute or two. If you're just now joining us, this webinar is being recorded, and we'll have a recording made available in the very near future. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Um, so welcome everyone. My name is Noah Pittman. I'm the Associate Dean of Enrollment for the Honors College at the University of Arkansas. This is my first year as chair as the Extending the Dream Grant Committee, of the Extending to the Dream Grant Committee. We're really happy to have you here today. This presentation is a Zoom webinar, so everyone is muted. You're not going to be able to ask questions verbally. But if you have questions as we're going along, please feel free to type them into the chat. We'll try to answer them as we're going through the presentation, and there will also be time at the end for question and answer too. So we want to make sure you've got all the information you need to prepare a really strong grant for extending the dream. Before we get started, though, we have a few of our committee members present today. So, as I said, my name is Noah Pittman. That's a picture of me before I had kids. So that's a much younger time of my life. I'm going to let our other committee members on the line introduce themselves. Cynthia, do you want to go first?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cynthia Simpson Obioha. I am in Columbia, South Carolina with Capstone College Consulting.
And good morning, everyone. I'm Katrina Cole Garner. I'm a school counselor at the Gwinnett School of Math, Science, and Technology in Georgia.
Mhm. And we have another committee member, Marceline Lindsay, who's also from Georgia. Marceline's out on bereavement at the moment, so she's not able to join us, but she will be part of the committee this year. So we're really happy to have all of us. All of us have served on this committee for a number of years now. Cynthia is our former chair as well, so we really appreciate her continuing her service on this committee. Now, what exactly is the Extending the Dream Professional Grant? Um, this is a grant that's been around for a number of years now that SACAC operates to help establish and pay for special projects in communities that really promote college access. It's awarded annually and is meant to serve primarily college-bound students. Many of the recipients of this grant have served as advocates for creating pathways to college by pushing limits on college access and increasing awareness about the college search process. These grants can range anywhere from about $500 upwards to about $1,500 is the maximum. Most are going to be somewhere within that range. It's also important to note that this is a reimbursement grant. So if you are offered the grants, you will have to keep an original receipt from what you spent for the grant. These receipts have to be filed along with a report within 30 days of the event too, so be mindful of that. Part of the application includes when your anticipated date of the event will be. Um, we will try to give you reminders about that, but SACAC is really firm about that 30-day deadline. So once again, it is a reimbursement grant that you will get after the event takes place and you've done the necessary reporting. So we wanted to talk today about what this application looks like. Some of you may have done the application in the past and been successful. Some of you have maybe never heard of Extending the Dream until you got an email last week. So we wanted to break down each element of the application, which is currently available on the SAC ETD website. So I'm going to turn it over to Katrina to talk about timeline and introduce the application.
All right. So as Noah mentioned, the application actually went live last Monday, March the 2nd. And so we are officially into our application window. Applications will be accepted until end of day on March the 27th. And so we have still a few more weeks for you all to get your applications turned in. Once we have compiled all of the completed applications, the committee actually reads and scores each and every application. And then our goal is to always notify those applicants who are being offered an interview at least a week ahead of time, so that you have time to prepare. But we wanted to go ahead and provide the dates of those interviews so that you can hopefully set that time aside. Interviews are held April the 13th through the 15th, and those interview times are typically 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, all the way up until maybe noon or 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so again, we try to notify applicants who have been awarded an interview a week or so ahead of time, but please plan, because we are not able to offer interviews outside of that window generally. And then once we've completed all of our interviews, all interviewees, all projects will be notified as to whether or not they were actually awarded one of the grants, and you'll be notified between the dates of April the 20th through the 22nd. You'll have a final answer by that time. And then once you've been awarded the grant, the window to use your grant funds falls between August the 1st through June the 1st of 2027. Noah's going to probably go into a little bit more detail about that when he goes over the budget. But this is the window where you must use your grant funds, and making sure that you have your reimbursement paperwork completed also within 30 days of your actual event, to ensure that you or your organization or your school is reimbursed for the money that you have already spent. Next up is the components of the application. The components are pretty straightforward. There are 3 parts of the application, and we're going to spend some time going over each part in detail. And so the 3 parts you'll see listed here, but I'm going to start by going over part 1. And pretty simple information. This is the place where you're going to give us the contact information for your organization, the grant lead's name. This is typically the person who is pulling together the grant application, writing the grant application. This person also typically serves as part of the interview panel if offered an interview. And so we need that person or persons name, the name of the organization, a mailing address, a phone number, email address. We also need to know your SACAC membership status. And so SACAC membership is required. And if you are a public school or a CBO, those membership, you can still get complimentary membership. And so if you've not done that yet, you still have time to do so ahead of getting your application submitted. We also need to know your organization type. So if you're a school or whether it's a public school or a private school, if you are a community-based organization, make sure that is clear in your application. And if you are a past recipient of an ETD grant, we want to know about that as well in your application. Part 2 is where you're going to get into the nuts and bolts of your project. Obviously, you're going to include the project name, but this is where you get to introduce and provide a detailed description of your project. We have a sample of one. This is a real actual program that was awarded one of the grants in the past. And I don't want to read the entire slide, so I'll just give maybe 15 seconds for you to read through it. But one of the things you'll notice is that your project description should essentially explain the who, the what, and the why of your project, right? So who is going to serve, what you plan to do, and why your project is doing what it's doing. And so the who, the what, and the why should definitely be covered in your project description.
So the next part of the project details is going to be approximately how many students will your project serve and why is the population you plan to serve most deserving? As we mentioned in the beginning, this is meant to really promote college access, especially among underserved communities. So what we wanted to do was also show you an example that we think was very impactful when we were reading applications about students being served. One of the things you're going to notice, again, I'm going to be like a tree, I'm not going to read this word for word. You're going to see a lot of good data about the population that's being served by this group or by the project. Um, you need to assume we know nothing about where you're from, the population, the school, the community that you're serving. I'm from the very northwest corner of SACAC in Northwest Arkansas. Cynthia's South Carolina. Katrina and Marcy are both Georgia. SACAC is a huge region. So don't assume we know really anything about your town, or even if it's a really big city. But you notice right off the bat here about this description mentions all of our students are first or second generation immigrants. You see things about limited financial resources, Pell eligible stats. Majority of the students are from 2 rural counties. Any data you have about your school or the population that you're working with, that's going to be really effective. Like I said, always assume we know nothing about it. That's going to help us learn more about the group and make sure that they're fitting within the spirit of the SACAC ETD grants. Make sure, again, any data you can provide, that's going to be really beneficial as we're reviewing your application. And then in terms of the project details, expected project date. As we mentioned, it is a little bit different this year that because of the fiscal year with SACAC, the project does need to take place between August 1st, 2026 and June 1st, 2027. Now, we understand things happen, things change. But this is giving us information, A, that you're following within that group, and B, that we can send you reminders around that time to make sure you're getting your reimbursement grants in. And we do ask that if you are awarded a grant, you do have to make a substantial change to that project date that you let us know ahead of time. We also want information about partners, collaborators, especially, we're not going to, if you're getting money from other groups, that's great. We want to see that you are looking for all sorts of funding sources, that you're trying to not just rely on SACAC ETD. If we're the only grant you can find, we definitely understand, but any partners, collaborators, anyone contributing to that event, that's great. And then we also need you to provide details on how the project will be assessed. You will have a final report that you have to submit as part of the grant along with your receipts. So we want to know what type of assessment tools you're going to use. So an example we see pretty often, we do a lot of grants for people who are doing some type of college visits. They need money for the buses or for the food or you name it. And what a lot of times on a college visit, they may have a pre-test and a post-test. So seeing beforehand, what did the students know about that institution, about college admissions in general? Afterward, what did they learn? What do they now know? Any type of assessment tool, pre-test, post-test is pretty common, but any type of assessment tool you use, we want to see that in the application. Because again, we want to make sure that these projects are getting off the ground and that they're at least making an attempt to accomplish the goals that are set forth in the project description. So once again, you'll have that project assessment. Be thinking about that. You can always ask us ahead of time if we have any opinions about assessment tools you'll use. That is part of the application for the ETD grant. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia now to talk about the third element, which is the project budget.
Thank you, Noah, and good morning, everyone. You will need to upload your project's budget as a part of your application. And so we want to spend the next few minutes talking about your project budget, what it can look like, and how to make it most efficient and simple for us to understand your needs. So this is a sample that you see on your screen of a project budget and the items that we would like you to list. In the left-hand corner, you see the items there that are needed for the sample project: materials and supplies, transportation, a facilities rental, equipment purchase or rental, photocopying. Whatever your needs are for your project to be successful, we ask that you list them. And then we want you to do some research on the projected cost of each of your items and list those for us as well. In addition, the amount of funds you have already secured. Sometimes we see projects that need or are asking for funding from us, but as Noah just mentioned, they're also seeking some funds from other sources. And so if you've secured funds from other sources, we'd like you to share that information. And then finally, the last column is the amount of funding that you're requesting from SACAC and ETD. So this is a sample. Like I said, you will get an opportunity to upload that. We will ask you, as Noah mentioned earlier, if you will be receiving funds from any additional sources other than SACAC and ETD. And we do ask that you provide that information. Please know, however, it is not for us to penalize you in any way or not provide funding if we can. We just want to be sure that we know all the ins and outs of your financial sources so that we can put our resources available to us via SACAC to the places where the most impact will be made for the students. And this is a sample of a completed projected budget for a project. So again, we have those same columns and item heads, the items. This sample budget shows there is a need for bus rental, snacks and lunches, and surveys. So research was done to identify that the projected costs of each of those items were listed there. So bus rentals at $2,800, snacks and lunches at $900, and the surveys at $20. So this particular group, imaginary, went out and found some other resources to help with this particular project. So thus far, they found $150 for buses, $100 for snacks, and they've been able to cover the cost of the surveys, which leaves the amounts you see there that they're requesting line item by line item of ETD, and then the total at the end. Your budget can be just as simple as this. And, you know, for us, if you keep it simple and you've done your research, it's really easy for us to follow what your needs are and what you may be requesting of SACAC and ETD. So when we put it all together, I think the next couple of slides will just show some of the great work that some of the organizations have completed and students have benefited from in the past. So if we move on to the next slide, there we go. We have the College Pathways of the Triad 2024 grant recipient. They were able to take a group of students who perhaps would not otherwise have been able to go on a field study at a college to have a college visit. And likewise, with this particular group, you see a much larger group here. Unidos Now was able to also receive the ETD grant a couple of seasons ago for also having a college visit for students who may not have otherwise been able to participate. And so I think now we'll open things up for questions for you all. Before we go to any questions, I would just ask you again to think, when you think about your budget, remember to keep it clear and concise and to be sure it's organized so that we can follow it well. It's going to be really important that you look at which of your line items are most important to you and your project in order to have things happen the way you expect it to happen. If you are invited to an interview, you can bet that one of the questions will be which of your line items is most important. So we want you to be very thoughtful about that, because in some cases we might not be able to fund everything. So we want you to be thoughtful about the items that you're requesting. So it's great to know your top 1, 2, 3 items that really are going to make your project work. Okay, thank you, Noah.
Yeah, I see that we do have one question so far in Q&A, and y'all are welcome
Okay.
to add more. I'll read it real quickly to the committee. Uh, from Kim, we want to replicate a project that we've done in the past through the support of the ETD grant that was incredibly successful for our district. How does the committee view this? We can definitely change our area of focus if that is more likely to be awarded. Any thoughts from the committee on? We have had people who do multiple grants over the years. Yeah, I think if it's in my opinion, if it's a very similar grant, we'll go back to the report that was submitted to make sure that it was run smoothly, successful. I don't feel like you need to reinvent the wheel if it's been successful in the past. Cynthia, Katrina, any thoughts on that or this committee members?
Y- Yes, I would I would agree with that, but I would say, and I'm sure we all do as educators, we have things that we've used in the past, but we might need to tweak them a little bit because of our current student population that we're trying to serve. Overall, they may have the same needs, but there may be some things that, may need to be a little different because of population and the services that they need. So I would just say continue as educators to be aware of that and make those changes accordingly.
Yeah, and maybe also say, we did this in the past. This is where we thought it could be a little bit better. This is how we're making it better. That type of thing would definitely be beneficial. Um, Justin asked a similar question. The previous one, our program last year supported by ET grant was very successful. We plan to do a similar one this year for students who did not get a chance. How does that affect the review? Any additional thoughts from there?
I'd
It
Mhm.
just
does.
say the same. I'm sorry, Katrina, go ahead.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I was just going to say that it does not affect the review. Yeah.
Yeah, again, what are you improving? What variations are you making? Um, that's going to be very helpful, I think, in the review. Any other questions? We'll keep it open for another minute or so to see if there's any other questions from the group. All good questions.
Noah, while they're thinking, may I add something?
Go ahead, please. Mhm.
When we talked earlier about your contact information is really, really important. And I know sometimes our timeline does not necessarily um, align with when some of our schools are on spring break. I would encourage you to please think about where you are in your school life as you provide contact information. For example, if we are notifying people for interviews, for example, and you're on spring break, are you giving us the contact information that you're checking during your spring break? Okay, the email address, the phone number. Be sure that that is information that we can get to you at any time because unfortunately in the past, people have given us information that we use because they've given it to us as contact information, but when we try to contact them for interviews, unfortunately, they were not available. And as Katrina said earlier, the window for interviews is the only window. So we would hate for someone to miss out because we don't have contact information that is readily available to you. Both email and phone number. Our main method of communication is email. Okay, I don't know that we rarely pick up the phone and call someone, but please be sure that that information is correct as you are completing your applications. Thank you, Noah.
Well, thank you, Cynthia. That is really important. Just make sure whatever contact information you share, you're checking that, especially around the time of that we're sending notifications. I don't see any more questions, so we're going to go ahead and get to wrapping this up. Once again, as we mentioned at the beginning, the deadline to apply is March 27th by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. If you have questions after today, etdgrants@sacac.org um, is the email address that we are checking this time of year. I am also going to put into the webinar chat. This is the Extending the Dream website, which includes a link to the applications. That is on our website. But if you haven't looked at the application yet or have been on our website, I'd go ahead and click on that. That is going to be where the application is located. That's also where reimbursement forms are located. But please, please, please check that out and have a look at that application. But thank y'all so much. We really appreciate everyone participating today. We look forward to reading your applications. And I hope things are going well at all of your schools and organizations. I hope spring is treating you well so far. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Right. Bye, everyone.
Okay, everyone, have a great day.
Yes, thank y'all so much. I'm going
All
to
right.
end the webinar. We'll be in touch, okay?
Thanks so much. Y'all take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.